welcome back to the channel. My name's Adam Smith, and inside this game showcase, we head back into Primal the Awakening for challenge number 3, released by Reggie Games. The link to this challenge will be found in the pinned comment and video description, and the monster we're going up against is Xitheros for challenge number 3 for December 2024. In the clearing, Xitheros looms over Hydar, ripping into its chest with blood-soaked fangs. The moment the beast catches your scent, the venomous vines covering the ground coil around your legs, their thorns piercing deep. And this completes the battle board setup for challenge number 3. The aggression level for this challenge is 2, and players can choose whether they want to use or not use the Nightmare variant of the monster. You, of course, would add Nightmare variant stance cards into the fray and any number of Nightmare behavior cards that you have. The choice, if you choose to use any or all of those, is going to affect the total score if you win. I'm just going with the default for now, so there's no Nightmare cards involved. This challenge has 2 special rules, so both characters have their hearts pumping blood and poison. The wounds from our characters are going to send Xitheros into a killing frenzy. During character setup, each character is taking venom cards, 2, and shuffling them into their hunter decks. The second special rule is that Hydar is dead, yet its venomous vines live on, answering to a new master. With each wound dealt to Xitheros, a thorn branch shrivels and dies. When a character inflicts a wound to Xitheros, that character can remove a thorn vine token from their sector if there's one present. You'll see one in the north sector in green and the south sector as well. Here's a close-up look at the monster dashboard, ready to go in the top right-hand corner, and across the top we have the actual wound track, which we are trying to knock from its 10th position down to 0. We do this, we win the challenge. So we are primarily focused on getting the damage on this thing to take it out. Of course, there's lots of mitigation of other effects we have to focus on as we go, but in order to get that wound track moving, we need to hit the toughness value on the current stance card, which is right here. We start in stance number 1, and we're going to transition to stance number 2 when we get enough wounds to get down to 7. So how do you start taking that down? Well, when we hit 15 on the toughness value, we can then transfer the damage of 15 we got on this card out of the way, and that will allow us to move that wound marker 1 position. And we'll continue to do this. So for every wound, it's going to be 15 damage we're going to need, but as we go through the stance cards, that will change the toughness value potentially as we go. Also, you'll see which areas of the monster we can hit. Currently, it's only going to be the left and right flank, not the front and back positions of this monster. Also, the damage it will throw at us is in the bottom right, and we have a start of round effect at the very bottom here. Now, in just a little bit, we will certainly trigger this at start of round number 1, where it says all players draw 1 card. Then the monster is going to gain a struggle for each of the red cards we have across all players' hands. So we'll definitely deal with that very soon. This is the objective card here. It says at the start of the aggro player's attritions phase, another player may discard an aggro card from their hand. If they do, the aggro player gains a defense token. This is a permanent card that will stick around the entire battle long. Last but not least, we have the peril cards. This one is a permanent, immune to blind. This has to do with the aggro token. It says ignore the standard rules for determining the aggro player. At any time during the game, the aggro player is the player who currently sustains the most damage. At the start of the attrition phase, if the active player is the aggro player, they take a disrupt token. Now for this battle, we have Darian. He's coming in with his dragon claw. He's got a spined helm, a red scale armor, and you'll also notice a number of other items and potions, all at level 2. And Darian has his level 2 friend Thoreg coming into the fray with a skull shock weapon, the red scale helm, thunder armor, an explosive, and some potions. I've already drawn up my 5 cards. We're flipping them over now for Thoreg, who starts with a venom card in his hand. It states right on it, for those that are unfamiliar with this, the card can only be used to generate stamina, and when you discard this card from your hand, you suffer damage equal to your weapon level. Flipping over Darian's hand of cards, these are the ones we got. We got 2 reds, a green, a blue, as well as a venom in there. Not good. We'll take a closer look at each of the cards in both of the characters' hand in just a moment. But first, we're going to trigger that start of round number 1 effect off the stance 1 card, which says all players are going to draw 1, and then this monster is going to gain a struggle for each one of the red cards across all the characters' hands. Never been so happy to see a yellow card. Glad it wasn't red. So far, we have 2 red cards counted from Darian. Coming over to Thoreg here, he's got 2 yellow, a blue, and a green, and a venom. Let's draw a card off the top and see what it is. It's a blue, so we only have 2 red total. So a total of 2 red cards across all my characters' hands, so 2 struggle added right off the hop just for the start of round number 1. As we continue to roll through the start of the round, we move to the monster upkeep, where now we uptick the struggle by 2 because we have 2 characters in play. Now, experienced players know this, but newcomers may not. The monster loves using struggle tokens to either beef up behavior cards that will eventually get flipped over per the icons, because these icons represent triggers that will cause those behavior cards to flip, and they flip when they need to flip. It's not something that just happens at a particular point all the time. These are going to trigger based on effects per the icons there, and we'll talk more about them in a second. But essentially, some of those behavior cards, when you flip them over, will say that the monster will spend struggle if it has it in order to boost it, which can make it really bad for you. Now, the other side of the equation is if struggle starts to accumulate on this stance card, for example, over time, if it reaches a spot where the number of characters you have in play times 3, which in my case I got 2 characters, so times 3 is a total of 6. If it hits 6 or higher, it's going to trigger what's known as an unleash. It's going to discard the tokens, and it's going to throw damage at me, which is shown in the bottom right-hand corner for 2, which is not good, and it hits everybody in play, so both characters would take it. Now I've got to change the plans here. I'm going to actually go ahead and consume some potions with both of my characters. I think this is a good time to actually try and draw some additional cards up. Now, in terms of the timing of things, there were 3 things that happened here. First off, start of turn effects happened. So the very first thing was that based on the number of red cards in hand already, plus the additional one I drew, we gave struggle tokens to the monster. After that, you can then choose to consume a potion if you wish, which I decided not to in the moment, but I'm now going to go ahead retroactively and do it. What happens after that is the other struggle gets placed onto the monster, which I did for how many characters you have. So I can easily retroactively go back and use these potions right now without any gameplay impacts, and I'm definitely going to do so to make this first turn an interesting one. So the Impera is the potion I'm going to consume, allowing me to draw 2 cards. We'll go ahead with Darien first, and we'll do the exact same thing with Thoreg. So we got ourselves Pressing Strike, and next up, Precision Strike. There's our nice red there. Now we'll come over to Thoreg here. He's going to do the same thing. He's going to consume this potion here, exactly the same, drawing of 2. We're going to see what we get off the top of the deck. Got ourselves Exhausting Strike, and secondly, Storm Strike. Not bad. Now, I mentioned this earlier on screen in the video, but in the very top here, I forgot to actually place the attrition deck in view, so now you can actually see that it is there. Shuffled that up. Now, the one thing I want to talk about is these trigger icons, because it's a good thing to know what they are and when they're going to trigger, because you can strategically avoid them, or you can actually purposely have them trigger at certain times if you're ready for whatever fun could potentially be on the opposite side of that card. So first off, we have this one here, which actually does ironically tie to the attrition deck. At the end of the attrition phase is when this one will trigger. The second one in the middle is when you empty your hand. So once a character completely empties their hand, that one will trigger. The one beside it, looking like a foot walking through water, is exactly that. As soon as a character enters a space with water, that's going to trigger. We're now moving into the player phase, and as you know from the very beginning of the video and all my previous ones, the character I always have on the left-hand side is always my aggro character to start off the game. So the aggro token is there, which means the first player token is there, so Darien gets to start things off. Now remember, based on the peril card, we're not going to be following standard rules for determining the aggro player going forward after it's first determined. So basically, this character was selected for me at the very beginning, but it will change based on the damage that is dealt to either of these characters. Whoever sustains the most damage will be the aggro character, and that's going to change dynamically throughout the battle. And here's a look at all the cards I have inside of Darien's hand currently, which is definitely useful, minus that Venom card there. Now, before we go ahead and start playing cards out of our hand, let's decide if we want to move. I think Darien does want to move to the right side. I want to be in the flank of this monster to make attacks. Now, as you know, right off the hop, I had this Venom card in my hand, and unlike Wounds, it's a little more annoying because not only is it cluttering up my hand for when I refill my hand later on, but the only way to get rid of this card out of my hand and into the discard pile is to discard it for use for stamina, which I'll do right now to get the 1 stamina to move. So we'll have Darien here move to that position in just a moment, but this will now go into the discard pile, but it also makes me suffer damage equal to my weapon level, which is 2. Now, we'll have to see if this pans out in the end, but now I'm in an area where there's a plant that definitely gives me a benefit when using red cards in my sequence. Now, normally I wouldn't be so aggressive by discarding the Venom card right off the hop here and taking 2 damage, but I've got an opportunity here to put a lot of damage on the enemy in the very first hit out of the gates, and actually successive hits with Darian as he has multiple red cards in his hand. So getting into this position as he is right now next to this environmental effect is very good, because that has me, every time placing a red card in my sequence, gaining bonus damage equal to my weapon level. So that means for the next 3 red cards I plan on using, we're going to get 2 damage every single time. Also, the advantage of moving is I don't take the threatened token, so I don't have to worry about that. Now let's get some cards into my sequence here. We're going to go ahead and play Feral Desire. This one right here will apply some defense for me for the attrition check later on, which is nice. It's going to cost 1 stamina, so I'm going to discard Pressing Strike here down at the very bottom left, 1 stamina to pay for that. Unfortunately, I cannot use the card's effect as I do not have any card in my discard pile with keyword slash. Next, going to discard Lacerate. We're going to do an attack here. This is going to cost 2 stamina. So we're going to discard Rapid Slash, which has 2 stamina attached to it, going in the discard pile. And as you can see here, the yellow card does come before the red one, which is for the arrow, which is right after it. So this attack that's going to happen in just a moment is also going to inflict Vulnerable. Now let's take a look at Darian's equipment loadout. Pretty good. We got a Dragon Claw here, level 2. It says when you pay the stamina cost of a red card, you can increase the cost by 1, which I didn't do yet. If you do, you increase the damage the attack deals by 6, but you can only do it once per turn. I plan to do this on the next attack I plan to do during this turn, but not this one. But this right here I can take advantage of right now, and that's because I played a red card. If you paid with that symbol, which is right here, which I did, increase the damage the attack deals by 4. So base damage of the red card for Lacerate is 6 for this weapon I'm holding, and additional 4 from the gauntlet. Darian can also take advantage of the environmental effect of an additional 2 damage from the plant that's in the same sector he's attacking from. That's going to be a 12 damage hit total, and the toughness value of the monster is 15, so we haven't gotten up to the very first wound yet, but again, this accumulates over time, so we're going to continue to attack and get over that threshold. And because we chain these 2 cards together in my sequence, I get to inflict Vulnerable on the monster as well, which means the next time damage goes against the enemy, I can choose to discard this token to double the damage. Well, guess when the next time's going to be? Right now. We're placing another red card into the sequence. It costs nothing to be placed in for an attack, but I'm going to bump it up in order to take advantage of the Dragon Claw's boost of 6 damage. We're going to discard this card right here for an additional stamina, paying 1 stamina, which is well beyond what we need, in order to take advantage of that Dragon Claw's 6 damage. So we get that, plus the fact we just used another symbol, so that's another 4 damage from the gauntlet, and 2 from the environmental effect. So we have 6 base damage from the weapon. We have an additional 6 damage thanks to the fact we paid more stamina, so that's 12. An additional 4 for the gauntlet, which is going to bring us up to 16. 2 from the plant, which is 18. And we're going to discard this ×2 multiplier to turn 18 into 32. Well, my friends, when you have 12 damage already and you drop 36 more onto it, we've got ourselves a total of 48 damage, which certainly hits the toughness threshold at this point of 15. We can divide into that 3 times, which means we're giving 3 wounds to the monster, such a massive hit that we actually just jolted straight through stance number 1, as when we hit 7 on the wound track, we need to move to stance 2. So after that massive hit, we're going to drop the wound track down from 10 to 7, and we're going to move on to stance number 2. Well, my friends, things got a lot tougher in terms of that toughness value. Is now up to 20, and the monster now says it can't be taunted or confused. Got to keep that in mind. Again, the flanks, the sides, are the weakness for this monster for stance 2, but it also says when revealed, this monster is going to gain struggle tokens for each red card across all players' hands. Even though I've gone ahead and used 2 of them, which would make me think I don't have too many left, I still have 1 in Darian's hand, and I have 1 sitting in Thoreg, so that's 2 struggle, which is unfortunately going to tick this up to a total of 6, which means it's going to discard these, and it's going to use 4 of the 6, bringing back 2 struggle, and it's going to do what's known as an unleash, throwing damage at each of my 2 characters, 3 damage each. We've done a significant amount of damage to the monster, but the monsters also hit us back at the same time, and Darian has 5. So we got to think about potentially using potions, especially for Darian. Maybe if the attrition value that comes off the deck ends up being a 1, we can potentially in the next round use his healing potion to maybe heal 4 up and get him back to a spot that's good. But one thing we do get right now, which is quite nice, is Relentless Assault. We're trying to count our way up by getting this twice in order to flip over our mastery and be able to use this going forward. So because I had 2 red cards in my sequence in a row, we count this by 1. We need 1 more of those to occur in order to flip this over and have our mastery. At this point in time, I got 2 cards left in hand. I have Precision Strike and Retreat, and Precision Strike would be awesome to use right now because it'd be another great attack, but unfortunately I need 3 stamina and I don't have it. I could, however, play this defensive card here, and by doing so, could get myself a little higher on that side of the equation, seeing as Darian's not doing so good for wounds, and if we happen to go ahead and pull a 2 or higher currently, we are going to get hit by damage. We do have 1 defense in here, but if I want to be really certain he doesn't take another good smack, which would be pretty dangerous, I probably should be safe. But the other thing I could do is risk it, hold on to the Precision Strike and the Retreat, and just use those in a future turn, which might actually be the way to go. And this is a very risky move because that attrition check could come back to haunt me, but I think I'm going to actually hold still right there. Of course, the other benefit to holding on to 2 cards at the end of your turn is you get a stamina boost. So I get 1 stamina token thanks to holding on to 2 or more cards. Let's head into the attrition phase, and on the objective card as well as the peril card, we have some effects for the start of that phase. So we want to read these and trigger the ones that apply. We also need to think about the fact that Darian has the most damage, so based on the rules of this monster is focusing still on Darian as the aggro character. So it says here, another player may discard one of their aggro cards from their hand, which is the red icon on the top right. If they do, the aggro player, which in this case right now is Darian, gains a defensive token. So this is one way we can actually use the objective here to lure the beast and also beef up Darian's defenses. We'll discard this card from Thorweg's hand. It has the red aggro icon in the top right hand corner. This is going to provide a defensive token for Darian. We've got 2 defense now, and you'll see why I did that because it says here, another effect, if the active player is the aggro player, which is true, they take a disrupt token, which is going to literally minus a defense away. So essentially it nulls out what we just did, keeping us at least at 1 defense going into the attrition check. That's why I wanted for sure to pump things up from Thorweg. Let's go ahead and draw the card off the attrition deck. Now what I'm hoping to see is a 1 for 2 reasons. If it's a 1, not only do I block it and I don't take any damage, because of course if I take damage it's going to be 3 and that's actually pretty substantial, but if I get a 1, I also have the potential at the beginning of the next round to consume some health potions and I can get the maximum value for it for Darian. So I really want to see a 1, but I don't know if it'll pan out. Let's find out if it does. We got ourselves a 3. That is not what I wanted to see. Darian, you did such a great job with that massive hit out of the gates. It felt so good, but now, my friend, you are in some serious trouble. But if we take a look at the health for my character, it is actually 20, which is pretty decent. So even though I've got 8 damage, which is a lot, we are still kicking. We haven't hit the halfway point of damage yet, but we still got a lot on him, and I really don't like that. That's really going to make the monster focus on Darian as he's taking way too much damage way too fast. Now, we're done the attrition check, but the bad news is a behavior card is now triggering. On the far left-hand side of the monster dashboard, we have a card, and that icon means the end of the attrition phase. We're flipping it over. The card is called Trample, and it tells us that it's going to gain 1 struggle. So it's the number of characters, which is 2 minus 1. So that ends up being a 1. So 1 struggle. It's already at 2 struggle total. So it's going to flip one of the 1s into a 3. So we've got 3 struggle on the monster right now. The aggro player is going to suffer damage. That's not good. Unless players collectively pay 1 stamina. So collectively, we have to discard 1 stamina from each character. So I'm going to have Thorweg discard 1 stamina card worth 1. And on the left, we've got Darian with a 2 stamina card being discarded, which is really unfortunate. But that will at least avoid another 3 damage coming his way. It's now time for Darian's end of turn cleanup. So we're going to discard the sequence in the order played to the discard pile, refill our hand. We're going to draw back up to our hand size limit, which is currently 5. The monster is going to turn towards the aggro player, which we know for sure is Darian because he has the most damage. Now, just before the monster swings around to face Darian, I want to mention one thing. I left the round counter at the very top spot. It should be in the round 1 position as we're inside of round number 1. No gameplay impact right now whatsoever. Just wanted to mention that. For better or for worse, we've drawn the monster's attention towards Darian on the right-hand side of the board. Thoreg's turn now begins. Start of turn effects will trigger. Let's talk about his loadout, his health, as well as his hand of cards. I'll give you an up-close look at all these in just a moment. Thoreg's been doing some things behind the scenes so far, as you've seen, so he's got some cards in the discard pile already. He's got an explosive here. At the start of the turn, we could choose to use this. We exhaust the card, deal 10 damage. If it inflicts a wound, we then get to stun and confuse the monster, but the monster in stance 2 cannot be confused right now, but it can be stunned. However, I have to inflict a wound, and right now 10 damage will not do it. That'll get us to 13, and we need 20 to get that wound. So we'll hold off on this for now. We have healing, and we have this other one over here we can consume in order to get some benefits. Now the helm over here and the thunder armor are worth looking at. The helm has an action, discard the top card of the deck. If the card is a red card, we get to add it to hand. We can actually do this twice per turn. So very handy, but comes at the expense of ripping through his deck. Now over here, thunder armor says when you empty your hand, you can deal 5 damage. Pretty good. Downside is right now the monster has 2 behavior cards that if his hand or our hand for our character is depleted, it's going to trigger those behavior cards. So you always want to keep an eye on the benefits of what your character can do versus how the monster is going to react to your character. And then we have the skull shock here. It'll do +1 damage for each counter on it. You get counters on it by playing red cards, basically making attacks, makes the skull shock stronger over time. But on top of it, once there's already 3 counters maximum on the card and you go to make an attack, all the counters come off and you get to inflict stun on the attack, which is pretty awesome. I'm deciding to keep Thoreg exactly where he is. He's not going to move, which means he takes a threatened token. When we go to the attrition check, he's going to be drawing 2 cards and taking the worst of the 2 results. Darian's going to provide an assist here, discarding this card, Voice of the Dragon, as it shows the assist keyword, to allow Thoreg to draw a card. And Thoreg got the card Adrenaline Rush, which has 2 stamina on it. That could come in very handy. We'll play a yellow card into my sequence. This one's called Decisive Effort. So it has something here stating that if this card's in play and another one comes in the sequence that's red, we can increase the damage of the attack the red deals by 3 times the weapon level, which is 2. So it's a total of 6 additional damage. I'm going to play for Decisive Effort by discarding this Exhaustive Strike card for 1 stamina to pay the cost, going in my discard pile. Next up, as you'd expect, because I want to take advantage of this ability on the card, is going to play this one here. This is Storm Strike. Now, this does have an aggro icon in the top right-hand corner, which is going to trigger a behavior card once we resolve this card. But the card here is a finisher, so it'll end my sequence. It also tells us to increase the damage the attack deals by X, which is how much we pay in stamina for this card times the weapon level. I'm paying 4 stamina, discarding these 3 cards. 4 times 2, the weapon level, makes this 8. Let's go ahead and add up damage here. So first off, Decisive Effort is going to provide 3 times 2, which is the weapon level, 6 right there. This one's going to provide 4 times 2, which is going to be 8. So we got 14 damage right here. Then we have not emptied our hand, so we don't get the Thunder Armor. I'm keeping the Venom card in hand because I do not want to discard this in order to get 2 damage. Even though getting an extra 5 damage would be nice, it would trigger a bunch of behavior cards on top of the one we already have to resolve, and I don't want to do that. We're going to go ahead right now and place a counter on Skull Shock after we take advantage of the 6 base damage, so 6 into what we already have. And that, my friends, ends up being a clean 20 damage going through, which is enough on top of the 3 we already have here to hit the threshold of 20, because we'd have 3 plus 20 is 23. We'll take 20 away, gone, just like that, as if it never even showed up. And we're going to place a wound, so we're going to drop this down from 7 to 6. Now, part of the challenge rules state, if we are in a location with one of those green tokens, those tokens are known as thorn vines, and when you're standing in one of those sectors and you inflict a wound with one of your characters, you can then remove that thorn vine token from the sector. Now you might be wondering, well, what did that do in the first place? It just increased the stamina cost for the red card which I used, which worked really well in the case of the one I just used because it required as much stamina as possible to increase how much damage it dealt. So it was a perfect one to pay an extra one on top of. And I actually paid well beyond it. Its requirement was 2, and I paid 4. Now, just prior to triggering that behavior card, I need to go back retroactively. I mentioned something on the screen when we transitioned from stance 1 to 2 with Darian in terms of changing over the stance card, but I missed going ahead and bringing in the new peril card that ties to the new stance. And this one says immune to blind. We don't have to worry about doing anything retroactively for that, but good to know. But it does state when you suffer attrition damage, shuffle a bleeding card into your deck. If you already have a bleeding card in your deck or discard pile, then it advances to to stance 3. You'll notice there is nothing over here in the top right letting you know whether or not you're supposed to advance to the next stance as it normally shows on most monsters. In this case, it's all about seeing this instruction right here on the peril card. So what happened was we transitioned from stance 1 to 2 during Darian's turn, and then Darian did an attrition check and he failed it. He got the 3. So he should be shuffling a bleeding card into his deck right now. With that now squared away, let's go ahead and resolve the behavior card for the enemy. And this is, again, is going to tie back to us using an aggro card in our sequence for Thoreg, the red one. It's going to trigger this card right here. The card is enraged. The monster's going to get +1 on his damage until the end of the turn for each of those card icons in the active player's sequence. I currently have 1 of them. The monster also has 3 struggle, and it's going to spend 1 of it, as it has it, to make the active player take a disrupt token. So poor Thoreg is going to take that. So essentially now in my row for defense, which is not good, I have 1 defensive card, but it gets canceled out by that disrupt token, which means I have absolutely no defense inside that row. Plus I'm threatened, meaning I'm drawing 2 attrition cards, and unless I see 2 zeros, things aren't looking good for me. Ending my turn off right here. Unfortunately, I don't have 2 cards or more in hand, so I do not get a stamina token. We now go into the attrition phase. We'll take a look at the objective card here. It says at the start of the aggro player's attrition phase, but the aggro player, based on us not following standard rules for determining the aggro player, is currently still with Darian because he has the most damage on him. So right now it says at the start of the aggro player's attrition phase. This is not the aggro player's attrition phase right now. It's Thoreg's attrition phase. So we can skip past that for now. We'll come over here at the start of the phase. If the active player is the aggro player, they take a disrupt token. That is currently not true, so no token being taken. Next up, when you suffer damage from attrition, you shuffle a bleeding card into your deck. If you already have a bleeding card in your deck or discard pile, then the monster's going to advance to stance 3. We don't have one in Thoreg's deck yet. We know we have one in Darian's deck right now. Thoreg was considered threatened, so we got to draw 2 attrition cards, and we really just have to pray we see 2 zeros, and I just don't think that's going to happen. We got ourselves a 1, so that's already going to send us into the pain. Oh, and that's good, though, in terms of our health. So we got 2 cards there, so we have a 1 in the discard pile, which is good for the potions later on, but right now, unfortunately, we're going to be taking a hit, and unfortunately, on top of that, we have Enrage here, which is +1 damage for each of the cards in the active player sequence, which is just 1, but that's going to be added on top of the 3, so 4 damage to Thoreg plus a bleeding card into the deck. That's going to bring Thoreg up to a total of 7 damage. So we'll simply go ahead and flip over 1 of the damage tokens here to 5, making it a total of 7 damage, and we'll take a bleeding card specific to Thoreg, and we'll shuffle this into the deck. Now we do end of turn, we'll discard the sequence, refill our hand. The monster's going to turn towards the aggro player, which is still Darian, so the monster's actually not going to turn whatsoever. And just like that, we're all squared away. We've also drawn up some cards, got 2 red, yellow, and a green, and of course the 1 venom card is still clogging up our hand. We'll now trigger any end of round effects. We don't have any currently, so we move the round marker from 1 to 2. Quite a bit accomplished in that very first round. We got this monster from 10 down to 6. That's almost half its health. Pretty awesome so far. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up part number 1 of Primal the Awakening, challenge number 3 against the monster Xitheros. I'm looking forward to finding out whether my 2 characters can continue to be as successful as they were in just a single round to continue putting the damage against the enemy to try to get this thing down to 0 health and take the victory. Join me in the next episode coming very soon for the finale to see whether they can pull off a victory. Let me know your comments down below and also how you're doing with this challenge to this point. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.